Hello everyone! We've all had miserable games of Commander before, right? I want you to imagine the worst game of Commander you've ever played. Excluding games where the misery came from a non-gameplay element like rude opponents or other bad actors, you're probably imagining a game that had one of these cards, but not one that had one of these. Why is that? It's because the worst you get from power discrepancy is a boring game. But when a deck's pilot actively has no interest in winning and yet still contributes meaningfully to the outcome of the game, then you get an even worse conflict of interest. Let's start with the point that CEDH and EDH are not separate entities. You'd be wrong to call CEDH its own format. You can prove this by considering the popular fallacy, the idea that EDH and CEDH players would be happier if they just split off from one another. Here's the thing about that. No one would play the standalone CEDH format. They would all migrate and try to optimize the new commander instead. This is because CEDH is actually not real. It's a byproduct of having a format to begin with. Where there are rules, there will be people who find it fun to achieve the best thing within them. To put it more simply, where a casual player is a label given to those who play with jank decks and play to win, CEDH player is simply a label given to those who play with the best decks and play to win. Wait, then what's this? It's time to talk about players that play jank decks and don't play to win. 42 board wipes the deck, Scrambleverse chaos piles, and even some group hug decks fit this description. The players who declare, second place is my first place. These decks are the source of the worst EDH games because they fundamentally seek to warp the game state like a real deck would, without actually turning that presence into a game end, which leads to a group hug deck king making their favorite player to win, or 4-hour-long games where it doesn't even feel like Commander anymore. Fundamentally, the thing that makes these opposing decks unfun is that they don't have the same goal as everyone else at the table. You are playing different games. These players aren't bad people, keep in mind. It's fine that they find this fun. What I am insisting is not okay, however, is that when we have pregame discussions, the only thing that comes up is a deck's power level, which means that these decks get to sneak right into casual tables unopposed. While any of these archetypes of players mingling will lead to an unfun game, I'm willing to argue that a difference in power level is far less disruptive than a difference in goal. Alright then, if unfun games stem from disruptive play-to-lose jank decks mingling with normal decks, why can bad games apparate even when all decks present are trying to win? Well, it could be from a few different factors, but let me put forward what I think is most likely in my opinion. Players are not playing optimally with their decks out of fear of hurting each other's feelings or because another funnier option presents itself. Like, tell me you've never once thought about one of the following things before. Oh, they've hit 4 lands off Bolas' Citadel in a row. Maybe I'll just give them one more spin. She hasn't gotten through for any damage this game. It's probably best to remove her Nashi, but I'll let this one through. I don't think I'll attack anyone this early. I just don't want to make enemies. I could go for a win right now, but this play is just way too funny. Okay, while that last example of letting yourself make a lesser play every once in a while in a game is fine, when you make multiple concessions like this in a game, it leads to a super unfun slog for everyone. Keep in mind too, if you're at a table with 3 other opponents where you're feeling the need to make these concessions, they might be doing the same as well, leading to the experience slowing by a factor of 4 instead of 1. Suddenly, that guy across the table who you feel bad for isn't behind because he's unlucky, it's because he would feel bad if he developed the game-winning play in his hand. What I'm trying to get at here is that pregame discussions that are entirely focused on power can sour the play experience for everyone, because talking about power alone doesn't reveal these outliers. A game can also come to a slog when players back out of what was agreed upon in pregame. In this case, trying their best to win. I want to iterate that playing a deck that doesn't want to win doesn't make you a bad actor or evil player. Just make sure everyone at the table is okay with you rocking that deck, because some people aren't up for the dynamics they can bring. Sticking to your lane and fighting for that win, even if it feels mean in the moment, will lead to more enjoyable games of Magic for you. I promise. This passive player problem is something that Wizards of the Coast knows about as well. Why do you think that whenever we get a multiplayer product, it has a mechanic that rewards or forces combat? Monarch, Goad, Initiative. Play design puts these mechanics in here because they want you to break the cyclical thinking that harming your opponents is somehow bad manners. The only exception is Battle Bond, and that's because it was meant to be drafted in a 2v2 environment, which is fundamentally free of the iconic feels bad multiplayer scenarios, due to there only being one opposing force instead of 3. To wrap up everything, I think the key to more fun Commander games is not only to briefly talk about the power level of the decks you're playing, but also what the deck is trying to do. Make sure everyone's trying to win the game, even if the decks everyone is playing are compromised for the preferred power level. Attack your opponents and meaningfully move the game forward. Even if you get an unsatisfying game, you can always just shuffle up and play again. So, tell me, what's the worst game of Commander you've ever played? Is there a time you gave someone leeway and it wound up being a bad decision? Even if you're playing jank, don't be afraid to play to win. Have fun out there. Until next time, bye.